Greeting and salutations. I am Lloyd, a producer at LCD Productions, and I have come to share this new series of visual audiobooks with you, the listener, the supporter, the viewer. Together we will go on a journey like never before, fly to new heights with Project Aerospace, explore new land and cityscapes with photations, even change the dimension of time through the power of time-lapse photography from live to tape. We'll even travel beyond the mind's eye into worlds captured and generated through animation from Thumbs United daily animation series. As we together go on these journeys filled with photography and theater of the mind, I hope you remember the core belief that we hold, that anyone can become the master of art, meaning that it is not some born skill what makes someone good at being creative. It is the desire to practice and spend time being creative that creates the master. I hope that these films, photography, and stories inspire you to set some time aside and practice some creativity. I believe if we all spend more time creating and being constructive, the world would be a better place, a more friendlier and fulfilling place. Thank you for coming. Let's begin this journey. This is Live to Tape in partnership with Project Aerospace for the visual audiobook of the Girl Aviators and the Phantom Airship. Chapter 14, A Girl Aviator's Adventure. In the meantime, Peggy and Roy, former at the steering wheel and controls, were skimming through the air above the charming country surrounding Acnic. The exhilarating of flying, the thrill and zest of it were strong upon them, and they glided along as they made their extended flight. "She is working like a $300 watch," cried Roy joyously as the speedy monoplane flew onward. "She's a darling," was Peggy's enthusiastic response. "I'm sure that if nothing happens, you'll win the race tomorrow, Roy." "I hope so, little sister," was the response, "for there's a whole lot depending on it. But just think, if you only do, we shall be at the end of our troubles." "Not quite, sis," Roy reminded her. "That affair of the missing jewels is still a mystery, and as long as it stays, some folks will always be suspicious of me." "Oh, Roy, don't say such things. Nobody puts that horrorest of the horrid would." "Unluckily," struck in the boy, "there are a lot of horrorest of the horrid in this world, and some of them are in Sandy Bay." He laughed and then went on one more seriously. "It's a pretty nasty feeling, I can tell you, to know that you are unjustly suspected of several folks of knowing more about an affair of that kind than you tell." "What can have become of the jewels?" "Ah, that's just it. Of course we have our suspicions, based really on nothing, that Fanning Harding knows something about them, but if he did, why would he place that wallet on the porch of Jess's home? It's beyond me. And beyond me, too. I'm quite sure that nobody was about that place when the incident happened, and I could not have been unconscious more than a few seconds. Now, who could have stolen the wallet in that time? It will all come out in time, I'm sure." "Roy, dear," said Peggy earnestly, "perhaps will turn out to be not much of a mystery after all." "I don't know," was Roy's rejoinder. "Mr. Bancroft has had some of the cleverest detectives in the county on the case, and a description of the jewels, some of which were heirlooms, has been wired everywhere and broadcast. But up to date, none of them have turned up any pawn shops or other likely places." For some moments more they talked in this strain, when Peggy suddenly gave a cry and pointed below. They were passing over a tiny lake surrounded by steeply sloping banks, wooded with beautiful trees. It was an isolated spot, no human habitation being near at hand apparently. "Oh, isn't that pretty?" cried Peggy delightfully. "Looks as if we might have come out of a picture book." "And the sight of that water reminds me that I'm terribly thirsty," said Roy. "I'll bet there are some springs by the lake, or if there are not, maybe the water is good to drink from the lake itself." "Let's go down and see," said Peggy, with a bright smile, settling over a lever and twisting a couple of valves. She began to depress the airplane. "There's a good landing place off there, to the right of the end of the lake," cried Roy, indicating a bare spot where some land seemed to have been cleared at one time. "All right, my brilliant brother," laughed Peggy merrily. "I saw it at least 5 minutes ago. Hold on tight. I'm going to drop fast." To anyone less accustomed to aerial navigation than our two young friends, the downward plunge would have been alarming in its velocity, but to them it was merely exciting. Within a few feet of the ground, just when it seemed they must dash against the surface of the earth with a crushing force, Peggy set the plane on a rising angle, and the golden eagle settled to earth as graceful as a tired bird. "Well, here we are," exclaimed Roy, looking about them at the sylvan scene as they aligned. "And now, what comes next?" "A hunt for the springs, of course," cried Peggy, placing one hand on her brother's shoulder and leaping forward from the chassis to the soft, springy ground, and off they set toward the margin of the little lake below them. "Reminds me of Ponce de Leon's hunt for a spring," laughed Roy, who felt in high spirits over the fine way the golden butterfly had conducted herself. "But he was looking for a fountain of eternal youth," said Peggy quickly. "Wonder if he'd have any happier if he found it," murmured Roy philosophically. "If he had been a woman, he would," said Peggy. "Would what? Have found it?" "No, you goose, but have been perfectly happy if he had attained perpetual youth. Why, whatever was that?" The girl broke off short in her laughing remarks. An expression of startled astonishment crept over her features. "Why, it was someone groaning," cried Roy, after a brief period listening. "Yes, someone in pain, too. It's off this way. Come on, Roy, let's find out what's the matter." Without a thought of personal danger, but with all the warm girlish sympathy aroused, Peggy plunged off to the path from a spot along which appeared to be the injured person must be groaning, but Roy caught her arm and pulled her back while he stepped into the front of her. Let me go first, sis," he said. "We don't know what's may be the matter." Peggy dutifully tiptoed along behind as, with hearts that beat somewhat faster than usual, they made their way down the narrow path which led them into the deep gloom of the deeper woods. All at once Roy halted. There arrived at the edge of the little clearing, in the midst of which stood a tiny and roughly built hut with big stone chimney at one end. Although the place was primitive, it was scrumptiously neat. Painted white with green shutters, with a bright flower garden in front, it was a veritable picture of a rural thrift. The boy hesitated for an instant as they stood on the opposite edge of the cleared ground. There was no question but that they had reached the place whence the groans had proceeded. As they stood there, the grim sound began once more, after being hushed for an instant. Now, however, they took coherent form. "Oh, help me! Help me!" Roy was undetermined no longer. Directing Peggy to remain outside till he summoned her, he walked rapidly with a firm step up the path leading to the hut, and entered. It was so dark inside that at first he could see nothing, but pretty soon he spied a huddled form in one corner. "Oh, don't hurt me. I'm only a harmless old man. I have no money," cried the cringing figure as Roy entered. "I don't want to hurt you," said the boy kindly. "I want to help you." He now saw that the form in the corner was that of an old man with a silvery beard and a long white hair from a gash on his forehead, and blood flowing, and a wound seemed to have been recently inflicted. "What is the matter? What has happened?" asked Roy gently, as he raised the old man to the chair which he fell limply. "Water, water," he cried feebly. Roy hastened outside, saying to himself as he went, "This is a case for Peggy." Summoning her, he hastily related what had occurred, and the warm-hearted girl, with many exclamations of pity, hastened to the wounded man's side. "Get me some water quick, Roy," she exclaimed, tearing a long strip from her linen petticoat to serve as a bandage. Outside the hut, Roy soon found a spring, back of the rickety stable, in which the old man had a horse and a ramshackle buggy. When he returned with the water, the poor old fellow took a long draught from the cup Peggy held to his lips, and the girl then deftly washed and bandaged his wounds. This done, the venerable old man seemed to rally, and sitting up in his chair, thanked his young friend warmly. Roy, in the meantime, had been looking about the hut and saw that it was furnished in plain but tidy style. Over the great open fireplace at one end hung a big picture. Evidently the canvas was many years old. It was the portrait of a fine, self-reliant-looking young man in early manhood. His blue eyes gazed confidently out from the picture, and a smile seeming satisfaction quivered about his lips. "I'll bet that's the fellow who has got on in the world," thought Roy to himself as he scanned the capital, strong features. "Ah," said the old man, observing the lad's interest in the painting, "that picture is a relic of old days. It is a portrait of my brother, James. But I must tell you how I came to be in this sad condition in which you have found me. Have you a comfortable chair, miss?" "Yes." "Very well. Then I will tell you what happened this afternoon in my hut, and I will relate to you something of my own story, for I was not always a hermit and an outcast." That was chapter 14. The next chapter is chapter 15, The Hermit of the Woods. Thank you for experiencing this journey we have created here at LCD Productions. For more information on how to support these films and projects, visit photations.com/support. Fine art photography prints from journeys around the world can be purchased from photationsstore.com, and digital downloads of our photography and visual audiobooks is available for personal use. Commercial use is available at a different rate. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you here again.